Okay, our next speaker, Ron Groves, will be presenting our next session titled Making the Switch, Finding the Right EV for Your Lifestyle. Ron's 30-year corporate career was spent in the car rental industry, working in operations and franchise development across Canada. In 2003, Ron's company, Excella Transportation Solutions, was born, providing consulting services directly to car rental business owners. In 2008, Ron made a right turn and, looking closer to home, joined Smart Commute, a transportation demand management (TDM) program run by Metrolinx. A year later, this program led him to find the Windfall Ecology Center in his hometown, Aurora, where he began the development of a sustainable transportation portfolio that included eco-driver, e-driver, and green spokes. In 2012, Ron joined Toronto-based nonprofit Plug and Drive, where he led their outreach and education program. Plug and Drive is a nonprofit organization committed to accelerating the adoption of electric vehicles in order to maximize their environmental and economic benefits. Since 2011, Plug and Drive has established itself as a Canadian leader in the electric vehicle industry, a trusted and unbiased source of information about electric vehicles, charging stations, and the electricity sector. Now semi-retired, Ron continues to contribute to the Plug and Drive EV education efforts across Canada, as well as local environmental nonprofits in Alberta, delivering EV education to the public.
Thank you, Aaron. Good afternoon, Edmonton. How y'all doing out there? Have you ever seen a room like this before? This is actually fairly incredible. I've spent the last 10 years of my life promoting electric vehicles, and I've never been in a room that has so much in it like this. Over here, you've got Bird and Lime with electrically powered sustainable transportation with scooters and bikes. Over here, you've got Zero motorcycles, the coolest bikes on the planet. They're all electrically powered, super quick, and no gas. Around us, we have a variety of representatives from the industry, from charging, charger installation, and some of the manufacturers as well here. And so, we've got Teslas, we've got Ioniqs, and of course, I think this is pickup truck country, am I right? And we've got like 3 Ford F-150 Lightnings here, and I think it's so cool. They're actually powering their booth and the TVs just using the truck. So this is a pretty amazing room, and I just wanted to give a shout out to the city of Edmonton that's putting this thing together, because it's a pretty cool space, and obviously there's a pent-up demand. Look at the attendance at the show here today is really terrific. And so I hope you're having fun here, learning lots about EVs and how we're going to electrically power transportation. And I'm going to try and just add a little bit of flavor to that, if I might, over the next 30 minutes. And then I will be open for questions as well, if anybody has some questions. And by the way, Plug and Drive is also doing the EV test drive out the back here. So we have our trailer out back. We have 3 great cars, all electric for you to test drive. So it's a bit lined up, but we'll try and slide you in if we possibly can. All right, there's the big mouth at work doing this job. So as I said, we've been doing this for about 10 years. So who is Plug and Drive? We're a nonprofit. We were based in Ontario. And I've been with them right since the beginning. We were a small but mighty crew. In the early days, we didn't actually have EVs to actually bring to shows. We had to go and rent them from the car share organizations in Toronto. And of course, we couldn't let anybody drive those cars, but we could at least have something to talk about. Nothing worse than standing there talking about a concept and you're pointing to an empty parking spot and there's nothing there to drive. And so over the years, we gained the trust of the manufacturers, and we took these vehicles on the road all over Ontario. We were doing 60 events a year and getting lots of bums in seats, because it is a really cool experience to drive an EV. It's different than driving a gas car. But that doesn't help the folks here in Alberta or any other parts of the country. And so wouldn't it be great if we could bring these cars out into the field? And so we built these 2 really cool trailers. And one is in the east, one is in the west here, and it will stay in the west. And we can drag this trailer around. Hopefully one day we'll drag it around with a Ford F-150 Lightning, because that would be the best. And we can drag this trailer around, set it up, bring out the cars, and invite everybody to come out and enjoy them. And that's what our trailer looks like. If you hadn't been outside to see it yet, it's just a sea container all decked out with all the information boards. Back in Toronto, we did have a big electric vehicle discovery center, but again, and it's in the process of relocating to a new spot. But of course, again, that doesn't help you folks here in Edmonton or any other parts of Canada. And so the trailer works fantastic for that. It's self-contained. We plug it in, we open it up, put the cars on display, and everybody comes in and enjoys an EV test drive. So I hope you get a chance to do that today. I do want to give a bit of a shout out to our sponsors and how we all make this work. So we are, as I said, we are a nonprofit. We don't actually sell the cars. We don't get anything for selling. If people go and buy, we don't get anything for that. And so as a nonprofit, we have to find our own funding. Yes, some of it does come from the government, but most of it, as you can see on the slide, comes from the power sector. Well, why would the power sector be interested in promoting electric cars? Maybe it's a source of revenue for them. All these cars are plugging into the grid using power, generating revenue for the power sector, which is great for everybody. So power sector is involved. You can also see the auto manufacturers are involved as well. We can't do this job without the contribution of the auto manufacturers, because they plate and insure these cars so that we can let you drive them out on the public streets. That's a really expensive thing. We couldn't do it without them. And then, I can't tell you the name of a gas pump, and we've all used gas pumps all our lives. Do anybody know who builds a gas pump? No idea. But I do know who builds electric vehicle charging stations. And pointing up there's the people there from Flow and Hypercharge and Switch. Who else we got in there? And numerous others that have helped us over the years. So all of these people contribute to our effort so that we can bring the EV message and the EV education out to the public. As I said, we don't sell the vehicles. And we've done a couple of interesting little projects. You can see Uber is on there. There's Uber. And Uber has a goal of changing all their drivers out of fossil fuel-powered cars and putting them into EVs. And so we did a program of education for Uber drivers to encourage them to do just that. And you're going to see a lot more work being done in that regard with regards to the car rental companies. I think you probably heard that Hertz just ordered like 200,000 EVs, and they're going to put them into their fleets. That's my background, is the car rental industry. And of course, it's the world's greatest test drive, isn't it? You go away on vacation, you're gone for a week or two, and you rent a car, and you have a great time on your vacation. And so you think fairly fondly of the car. Hopefully it all went well. You think fondly of the car that you had while you were on vacation. And so it's going to be awesome to see Hertz and others put these EVs into their rental fleet so that everybody can try them out for themselves. In the meantime, they have to come to places like this to do it. All right, so let's dive up to the 60,000 foot level and talk a little bit about why is this all happening. And of course, the world is quickly realizing that we can't continue to burn stuff, and especially we can't continue to burn stuff for our transportation. It is the highest GHG emitter in Canada, and when I talk about transportation, I mean everything, not just our personal vehicles, but also trains, buses, on-highway tractor trailer, boats, everything. When you think about it, it's all powered by fossil fuel. And so our emissions are quite high, and now we know that it's not sustainable. It's not the way forward. So what are we going to power our vehicles with? Rubber bands? Remember those little planes, you wind them up? Or how about compressed air? Think that would make a good car, a compressed air powered car? Maybe not. Electricity. And so electricity generation in Canada is actually pretty clean. 60% of our electricity generation in the country is from hydroelectric. So you're thinking British Columbia, Manitoba, Ontario is hydro and nukes, Quebec and Newfoundland, all hydro generation. Here in Alberta, not quite as clean, but nonetheless, we're about 75% fossil fuel generation. And so even plugging in your pure electric car into the Alberta grid, it is still cleaner than driving any gas or diesel vehicle on the street. So we say almost 90% greenhouse gas emissions. That's a generalization across the country. But generally speaking, it's not a long tailpipe. We are not diverting emissions from a tailpipe to a power plant someplace. Right here in the province of Alberta, we have one of the largest solar power plants in Canada. It's down by Lethbridge. It's huge, 478 megawatts of solar. And so that's on the grid today, powering these lights and all the stuff around us. So it is about cleaning up the grid. It is about reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and it is an easy thing for us to be able to do just by plugging in at home. Okay, when I first started doing this, the only cars that were available that were EVs were the Mitsubishi i-MiEV, the Nissan Leaf, which you've probably heard of, and the Chevrolet Volt, V for Victor Volt. And that was it. There wasn't a lot of choice out there, and these cars were really expensive. They were like $35,000, $38,000. So you had to be pretty darn green to be going out and spending $35,000 on a car that probably would only go 135 kilometers. And so I'm very pleased to say that today, every single auto manufacturer that sells into Canada has an EV or two. Ford, they have the F-150 Lightning, and they also have the Mach-E Mustang, and many others. So if you need a hatchback, you need a sedan, you need a pickup truck, you need an SUV, they're all out there, and they're all electric. And if you're still a little nervous about going full electric, there's tons of plug-in hybrids out there as well, making use of both gas and electric technology. But if you're looking for some sort of a car for your family, in the end, it has to do the duty for you and your family, right? If you can't haul the stuff you want to haul and haul the people you want to haul, then it's not the right car. And so now you have tons and tons of choice. If only we could get them, right? Right now, with supply chain constraints and microchip shortage out there in the world, they just can't make them fast enough. And then gas hit $2 a liter, and everybody wants an EV. So they're sort of sold out right now. But once that starts cleaning itself up, I think we're going to be in good shape. When I first started doing this again 10 years ago, as I mentioned, though many of those EVs could only go about 135 kilometers of range. And you tell somebody they're going to pay $38,000 for a car that goes 135 clicks, and they sort of look at you like you're nuts. And maybe we were, I don't know. But now I'm also pleased to be able to say that the de facto standard is about 400 kilometers. So most of the new, in the last 2-3 years, EVs that have been made by just about every manufacturer, with a couple of exceptions, do at least 400 kilometers. And if you order the long-range battery for some of these cars as an option, you're looking at 500 kilometers. So we've got lots of range in there now. And pairing that up with the electric vehicle charging stations that are being installed all over the country, we can go anywhere we want in our EVs. My Nissan Leaf is a 241 kilometer Leaf. It's a 2018. I've driven it to Vancouver and back. I go to Cochrane and Calgary. I live down in Canmore. I've been up to Edmonton a few times with it. I can go anywhere I want in my Nissan Leaf. Would I like to have 400 kilometers of range? Sure. And when my lease is up, I'm swapping it on a 400 kilometer car. Absolutely. But lots of range now, so that shouldn't be an issue for most people. But the big one, I mean, maybe you don't care about the environment, but you probably do care about saving some dough. And while the cost of entry of an EV is maybe a bit more expensive than a standard gas car, you can save a lot of dough over the lifetime of the vehicle. So we say $2,000 on the slide down there. That was when gas prices were $1.30 a liter. So we should probably change our slide. I'm sure the savings is way more than that. But if you know what, it's okay. So what is it going to cost me to charge my EV per month? What does that work out to be? For me, I'm Joe Average. We drive less than the 20,000 kilometers that most Canadians do, and so it adds about $25 to $30 a month to our power bill at home. And then you do that math, and that's what it's costing us to drive the vehicle for a year for fuel. And then you take a look at the maintenance expense on an EV. Well, EVs don't require a lot of maintenance. So in the 4 years we've owned our Leaf, I've changed the wiper blades a month ago, finally. I put in a cabin air filter a month ago, finally. I did have a brake service for $185, where they pulled everything apart, looked at the brakes and said, they're perfect. We'll just lube them up, blow the dirt out, and put them back together. That's after 60,000 kilometers. That's my most expensive maintenance item. There's no oil, there's no belts, there's no exhaust system. Brakes last double what a regular gas car brakes last. And so maintenance is really, really low. And we have a really cool calculator on our website at pluganddrive.ca where you can go in and compare 3 cars side by side. And you can look at and see, well, here's my gas car and here's 2 EVs or whatever. And you can put in the price of gas, price of electricity. How long am I going to keep the car? 3, 5, 7, 10 years? And it automatically calculates for you to show you when your savings start happening, where it's cheaper to own the EV than it is to own the gas car. Very cool calculator. It works super, super well. Uh-oh. Oh, good. That one's still up there. Okay. All right. So how are we doing in this? EVs have been out about 10 years. Is this a one-hit wonder? Is it not going to carry on? Is it not going to stay? Here's some sales numbers, and this is sort of global. And as you can see, right now, EVs are close to 9% of the global new car market. Granted, if you take a look at that chart and the bars on it, China is it's the biggest auto market in the world. It's also the biggest EV sales market in the world. And it takes up a big chunk of that number there that you can see. But that is the global market. That's where it's at right now. 16 million of them on the road. I think they're going to stick around a little while. I think this is a thing. It's happening. Okay, well, that's the world. That's great. What about us? How are we doing? And so now you can see, so I'll just describe some of the terms there. ZEV, a zero emission vehicle. BEV, battery electric vehicle. HEV, not hydrogen, it's a hybrid electric vehicle. And PHEV is a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle. As you can see, the common thread there is there's electricity in every single one of them. And as you can see, they represent 8.3% of the Canadian market. So when I first started doing this, they were almost 0% of the Canadian market. That's 10 years ago. So in 10 short years, every single auto manufacturer has a model or 2 of EV or plug-in hybrid, and you can see where the sales are going. And it's just going up all the time. Are we at a tipping point now where it's just going to take off? I would say yes, except with supply chain constraints, they just can't make them fast enough. And so that's where we need to really fill in the blanks, is to get the supply. If they were sitting on dealers' lots, we'd all be there buying them. I know they would, because the people are telling me outside, I've got my order in, but they're telling me 12 to 16 months before my car comes in. So the demand is certainly there. But I want to take a little bit of a deep dive now into charging. And not so much to talk to you about how these cars charge, although we can do that really quick and you can see that from the slide. But I want to talk about formats. Because if there's one thing that drives people nuts, it's having too many formats in one particular thing. We can all remember VHS and Beta. Beta was the better format. I had one. But VHS won the battle, right? Thanks, Blockbuster. We all remember HD and Blu-ray. And I want to go back a little farther. There's some of us in the room who remember leaded fuel and unleaded fuel. And there were actually 2 sizes of schnozzle, right? There was the leaded one, which was big, and there was a smaller unleaded one on the same pumps. And you couldn't put the big one, leaded, into a car that took unleaded. So, we're all used to now just pulling up to a pump, grabbing the handle, filling our car. With an EV, you can see the different formats there. So this one is Tesla, right up there. And you can see that for Tesla, the Tesla format is for level 1, 2, and 3. So regular wall plug, then 220 volts is level 2, and even their level 3, it all uses the same plug. Beautiful, except only Tesla can use them. It's like Apple, right? And everybody else uses the J1772, which is this one here. And you can see it right on that one too. And so at level 2, you've got 2 different formats between Tesla and everybody else. Tesla gives their owners an adapter so they can plug in, no problem. But then you get to level 3, and this is where it's really troublesome because you're out on the highway. Level 3 is the really fast charging that charges in minutes. And when you pull up to one of these chargers, and you can see I've got a Tesla one up on the left, and you can see I've got Electrify Canada ones showing on the right. There's actually 3 formats. Never mind 2 like Beta and VHS, there's 3. How nuts is this, right? So we have chargers for one group and we have chargers for another group. And when you're traveling, you have to make sure you get to the right places. Oh, it says there's chargers there. Oh, I can't use those ones. So we really need to do some consolidation here. And it's happening. It's starting to happen. We're over in Europe. Tesla has acknowledged that they're going to join everybody else and have a similar charging format. But we still can't use the Tesla chargers over here, because even if I have an adapter, I plug it into a Tesla charger and it won't work. Tesla charger goes, you're not a Tesla, away you go. And so we really need to work on that, right? Because, I mean, it's just nuts. We have one gas nozzle. We really need one charger format so that it's ubiquitous for everybody. So that's my one little gripe and rant. And if you're looking for home charging, this is a classic home level 2 charger. And we actually run a website, a web store. We built this web store to actually provide information about all the chargers. And so on there you can see what features they have, what power levels they have, what price ranges there are, what kind of cord features they have, etc. And so I urge you, if you're looking for information about EV chargers, to go there. If you buy it from us, great. If not, we're fine with that too. It's really, we're all about the education here. So, but that's a great place to look for information about home charging. But what about when we go back on the road? And so, you know, gas stations are big and bright, and they have all these services and restaurants at them, and they're easy to see. And so, you know, we don't generally plan our route based around the gas stations. We just jump in the car and drive, and when we need gas, we go, oh, there's one over there, and we go. Well, where are the chargers? Where do you see them? You just don't, right? The odd time you might see a row of Tesla chargers because they're sort of red and white and stand out. So how do you find them? So there's two pieces of software, PlugShare and ChargeHub. They're both free, and that's sort of what it looks like when you're looking at them. And it allows you to find all the public charging stations that are out there, period. And so if you're planning a trip, you can look along your route, pick the chargers you want to stop at. You can actually click on one, and you can see that bar that comes up along the side right over here. And that brings up all kinds of information about the charger. And that's really great. It's great to have all this information out there. But one of the things that Tesla could always do, and we try to be agnostic at Plug and Drive. We're not trying to promote only Tesla. There's lots of great EVs out there. But you gotta give it to Tesla. When they do something right, it's really right. And so if I own a Tesla, I don't need to know where the chargers are. I tap in my destination into the car, and the car says, here's your route. And here's where you're going to stop if you need to. You're going to be there this long, get this much energy. It's going to cost you this much. Total trip time, including your stops for charging, go. How cool is that, right? Really easy. For the rest of us, we can't do that. But we can use an app. Of course we can. A better route planner, right? And so you set that up once, and you put your route into that, and it will do basically the same thing. Except it doesn't know if the charger's broken. It doesn't know if the charger's in use. It doesn't know how many people are going to the same charger as you. Tesla does on the Tesla system. It's very cool. So that's one of the reasons why people love Teslas and love the whole concept of using the Tesla infrastructure, is because it works so beautifully well. It was designed to work together. We need that. We need that type of ubiquity. Back when we're looking at the formats, we need one format to plug in. So we all use the same one. And so this is what it looks like right now in the EV charging world. When you go on a trip, these are all the different networks of chargers out there. And they all work differently. Some of them you plug in, then tap a card. Other ones you tap a card, then plug in. Some of them take a credit card and not a debit card. Some of them need the proprietary card or the app. Holy smokes. Like, no wonder people are a little bit frustrated with the charger infrastructure out there. You know, if you're a geek like me and been at it for years and have just sort of learned it, okay, that's fine. But, you know, if my wife goes to drive our car and goes to drive 2-3 kilometers from Canmore to Edmonton, or 300 kilometers to Canmore to Edmonton, she's going to have to run into a variety of different apps and networks to use. And so we need to consolidate not so much the brands can stay, but just the way the chargers all work. And so, you know, it needs to be more Tesla-like, if I can use that term. And so it's coming. And what it's called is plug and charge. Never pull the plug out of the car without unlocking the car first, because that's what happens. So plug and charge is the answer to Tesla. Your car will be set up by you one time when you get your car new. Set up the app, set up your credit card, and then when you go to plug into one of these chargers, it'll just be like Tesla. You plug it in, the car knows it's you, it starts the charge, as long as your credit card's good, and it completes the charge, and the transaction payment is settled. All without having to tap, app, or do anything like that. You just plug and charge. How beautiful is that? I would argue it's better than the current gas station transaction today. Because even in a gas station, you got to plug it, you got to put the schnozzle in and then tap something to make it all work. Whereas if it was just all linked between the car and the charger, boom, completely simple, right? So plug and charge is in the works. There are some vehicles that can do it today, Porsche Taycan, Audis, the chargers out there that can do it are Electrify Canada and a couple others. So it's happening. It needs to happen a little quicker, and I would imagine that will provide people with a lot more security and a lot more ease of use. So it will be a better experience for people who are not geeks and geek out on this stuff like I do. They just want to drive the car and fill it up with electricity. And so this is the way it's going to happen. But of course, you don't see these chargers anywhere. And when you do finally find one, it's in the back of a parking lot someplace. It's one charger. Like, when was the last time you went to a gas station there was one gas pump? That was like 1922, right? And some of them it's dark. That doesn't make you feel very good, right? It's dark in the back parking lot, and you don't know if it's going to work or not. Wouldn't it be nice if there was a beautiful charging plaza that was just set up for EV owners to charge? And these would be along major routes so that as we're traveling, we could pop in there and charge our vehicles, and we knew exactly where they were. So a very cool thing happened. A website that's devoted to EV information called Electric Autonomy teamed up with a company called Parkland. I never really knew who Parkland was, but they're based in Calgary. They actually offer they're a concessionaire and a gasoline retailer. They do the on the run. Those you've seen the on the runs, and Chevron. Anyway, they offer fossil fuel all across the country. But what they did is they did a design competition, a global design competition, and asked architects to submit designs. What would an EV charging plaza look like if we could build, from a clean sheet of paper? They got over 100 entries from all over the world. There was some cash attached to this too. And there's some of the entries right there. I guess I should be pointing up there, shouldn't I? There's some of the entries. They do not look like gas stations, do they? They are very cool places, though. You can see the major highway right beside them. You can see the green roofs and solar panels on them. Look at all the chargers in that one in the top left. Tons and tons of chargers all the way around. A really nice place. That's the kind of a place I want to go to. I look at that and I'm thinking the washrooms are probably pretty clean. Might have some food there that I could use. I could walk the dog. I could take a stroll myself. It's a nice place to spend a little bit of time because right now, charging an EV on the road is a 20 to 40 minute experience, more or less. And so that would be a nice place to go. Good news, Parkland is going to do it. They're not, the guy who won is from Scotland, believe it or not. And they're going to build his design. He won first place. And it's going to take place somewhere in BC. So stay tuned for that. They haven't announced where yet, and I don't know if they're going to build the whole thing. They might do a half version of it, who knows. But I think that's exactly what we need in the world, across Canada. That's the kind of place that I want to go and charge my EV. And I want to have air for my tires and thing to clean my windshield and windshield washer juice available when I pull in there. I don't want to be shoved in some back parking lot someplace and not have these services. That, I think, is going to solve our problem. So we have some work to do. The infrastructure out there, we need to build out that charging infrastructure. If people don't see the chargers, it's sort of chicken and egg, isn't it? I'm not going to buy the car till I see the chargers. I'm not going to put the chargers in till there's more cars out there. Well, I think we got the cars. That seems to be working out. But now we got to work on the infrastructure. Ones and twosies isn't going to do it. And credit to Tesla, the minimum they put in is like 6. And 6 years ago, when they didn't have Model 3 and Model Y, those charging stations were almost empty. And people are going, what are they doing? Well, now they look like heroes, don't they? Because now they have Model 3 and Model Y. That's their mass seller. There's tons of them out there, and those charging stations are busy, and people love buying Teslas because of that charging infrastructure. So if they love that way, then they can love buying other people's cars as long as the charging infrastructure is up to the task. We need more batteries. That's part of the problem right now. These manufacturers cannot make batteries fast enough, or can't get them from battery suppliers fast enough to put them in the vehicles. You imagine the battery that's in that F-150 Lightning. It is absolutely huge. It probably weighs 1,600 pounds. That's a lot of battery. That is not a little battery like this, right? That's huge. And so where are we going to get those? Well, apparently, Canada has everything we need. We can get the lithium out of old oil wells right here in Alberta. Up in the north of Ontario, there's this place called the Ring of Fire where a meteorite hit and deposited all this nickel right into the ground. Nickel, copper, cadmium, it's all there. The Ring of Fire, they're just starting now to talk about developing it. And rather than exporting all of these minerals to Panasonic in Japan or LG in Korea, why don't we build the battery plants right here in Canada and make this stuff right here? And so that's happening. You probably heard Stellantis announced a big battery plant in southwestern Ontario. GM's going to do the same thing. So we've got that starting to happen, and then we can build these vehicles domestically. And education, since I'm an educator and that's big for me, we need to do lots more education. We need lots more plug-in drives out there. And the other day, imitation's the sincerest form of flattery. There's a new EV coming to Canada called VinFast. It's out of Vietnam, believe it or not. And they went and built a trailer just like ours. I wouldn't be surprised if they used the same supplier in Montreal. So they're going to put me out of work. I can finally retire. Yay. So we need lots of stuff to happen to keep this ball rolling nice and smooth. And a lot of it is going to depend on our governments. And so we need the government to set up the framework that allows EVs to be successful. It would be, and you just heard about the Inflation Reduction Act that took place. The Biden administration put it in place in the U.S. And it's important. I know it's not Canada, but it is important because a lot of the things that happen in the States end up happening up here. And so there's $5 billion with a B over the next 5 years to install charging infrastructure in that Inflation Reduction Act. It's fantastic. They're really hot on EVs down there. And here's the same thing being done by the Liberal government here in Canada. I'm not promoting any politics here. I'm just saying they're the government of the day. This is what they're proposing. This is what they're going to spend it on. And so we have a zero-emission vehicle mandate. That is, that by 2026, 20% of our cars and light-duty trucks will be EVs. And that by 2035, you won't be able to buy a gas vehicle in Canada new. That's pretty bold. That's pretty, hopefully they're going to back it up. Well, there we go, charging infrastructure, $2.9 billion. If they're spending $5 billion in the States, we're really punching above our weight here in Canada, aren't we? That's fantastic. And so we need lots of that happening in the country. That needs to stay in place and can't get voted out by the next government. So EVs are for everyone. I hope that through your tour around here, getting your bum in a seat out at our test drive out there, that you'll find out that they are really enjoyable to drive. They're really fun to drive, and that they'll work for you and your family. I'm just so enthused by what I see around this room and the excitement in here. The people are really interested to see this, and that's terrific. We just need lots more of it, and kudos to the City of Edmonton for putting this on here today. Thank you very much for listening, being a great audience.